We've got a big story coming out of Washington this morning. Today is the day. The final countdown is on to this morning's public release of the Mueller report. We've got in-depth coverage on what you can expect, how it's going to play out this morning. We'll start with NBC White House correspondent Kristen Welker. Kristen, good morning to you.
Savannah, good morning to you. Tensions are running high today as the public prepares to get its first look at Robert Mueller's highly anticipated report. Attorney General William Barr will hold a press conference this morning, even before Congress sees the findings. And now Democrats are crying foul. Just this morning, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer say Barr's handling of this critical moment has, quote, resulted in a crisis of confidence in his independence and impartiality. And now they're calling on Mueller himself to testify on Capitol Hill. After 23 months of secrecy, this morning, answers for the American public when Attorney General William Barr releases a redacted version of the nearly 400-page Mueller report. President Trump striking a note of confidence Wednesday.
You'll see a lot of very strong things come out tomorrow. Attorney General Barr is going to be giving a press conference. Maybe I'll do one after that. We'll see.
But that revelation that the Attorney General will speak publicly about the report an hour and a half before he gives it to Congress, prompting a backlash from Democrats outraged by the rollout.
The Attorney General has taken unprecedented steps to spin Mueller's nearly two-year investigation.
House chairs, including Judiciary Chairman Gerald Nadler, overnight calling on the Attorney General to cancel his press conference.
Attorney General Barr is not allowing the facts of the Mueller report to speak for themselves.
Further fueling Democrats' accusations that the White House and the Justice Department are coordinating. According to a New York Times report late Wednesday, Justice Department officials have had numerous conversations with White House lawyers about the conclusions made by Mueller in recent days, according to people with knowledge of the discussions. On Capitol Hill last week, Barr sidestepped a question about whether he had shared the report with the White House.
Have they been briefed on the contents?
I've said what I'm going to say about the report today.
In March, Barr released a 4-page summary of the sweeping Mueller report, which concluded the Trump campaign did not conspire with Russia to interfere in the 2016 election. And on the question of obstruction of justice, Barr said the special counsel didn't give a definitive answer. But Barr and the Deputy Attorney General concluded Mr. Trump's conduct did not reach the threshold of a crime. Now, the president has publicly insisted he never obstructed justice. Democrats have threatened to issue a subpoena for the report as early as Friday. Now, as for the delivery of the report today, it's expected to be sent to Congress between 11 a.m. and noon and later posted on the special counsel's website when, after a nearly 2-year investigation, the public will finally have its own say. Savannah and Craig.
All right, Kristen Welker leading us off from the White House. Thank you.
For more on the Mueller report, what's in it, what's not in it, and what's next? We turn to our Justice correspondent, Pete Williams. He is at the Justice Department. Pete, I know you've been talking to your sources. Let's start with what you are most looking forward to when this thing drops here in a couple of hours.
Well, first, Craig, at a very general level, how much of it is redacted or blacked out? Congress has threatened to go to court to get the entire Mueller report. There are other lawsuits that have already been filed. So what are we missing? Second, what actions did Mueller look at in investigating whether the president obstructed justice? Now, we can guess at some of them, the firing of James Comey, urging the FBI to go easy on Michael Flynn. But what were the others? And third, why did Mueller fail to make a decision about whether the president's actions amounted to a crime? According to Barr, the report says he didn't. Doesn't say whether he did. It doesn't say whether he didn't. So why wouldn't Mueller make that call, Craig?
But he did make a call, Pete, on the issue of conspiracy, collusion, whether or not the Trump campaign had coordinated in any fashion with the Russians' attempt to meddle in our election. What do you expect from the report there? We know the legal conclusion, but what about the underlying evidence?
Right. I think that's the critical question there. According to the Attorney General, the report says that no member of the Trump campaign actually cooperated with the Russians in trying to influence the election. So, question, what did the Russians do? Now, we know at some of them, the hacking into the Democratic computers, the phony social media sites, but what other attempts were made by the Russians, and what members of the Trump campaign did they reach out to? And finally, why did this report take almost 2 years to complete? And on the other hand, why did Mueller decide to stop when he did?
Pete, lots of questions. We'll see how many are answered today. Let's turn to NBC News legal analyst Ari Melber. Ari, good morning to you. In a lot of ways, this Mueller report, its legal significance is not particularly high at this moment. We know what the legal conclusions are. No criminal charges coming. What about its political significance? What do you think we're going to learn in terms of the evidence, the conduct, and that kind of thing?
Well, the political significance is huge, and you see that in this pitched battle. As we were coming to air this morning, Speaker Pelosi and Leader Schumer saying Mueller's got to testify to clear up what Barr is going to do today. The significance is, what do we learn from the evidence? What did we learn about people who may not have been charged, including the president's family members, but did they do things that the American public cares about?
Let's go back to Savannah's point here in terms of the underlying evidence as it relates to obstruction of justice. How would the special counsel lay that out in a report? How might he reveal evidence of obstruction?
We have some clues on this from precedent and reporting, and that is that we expect a factual narrative that Mueller and his team lay out. Here's what we found. Here's some of what you may have heard about. Here's new stuff you may have never heard about. And you need to know when the President of the United States does things that may amount to trying to interfere with or undermine our independent and nonpartisan law enforcement, you need to know about that. And by the way, if the evidence shows that they believe, the Mueller prosecutors, that the president did things wrong in that field, of course that should matter to Congress and the public, because he's still president. He can be president for a long time. He's in charge of these powers to arrest, to detain, to indict, to execute. I mean, this is what it comes down to when you talk about government power.
It's interesting because, as I mentioned before, we do have the top line legal conclusions. There's not sufficient evidence to charge a crime. But as you know very well, we have a very high standard of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. So it will be interesting to see how close it came for Mueller. Or is it just a shade short of that high standard of proof? Or did they have nothing that even came close to obstruction or collusion?
And that goes to why everyone has their eyes on Barr and whether this is the Barr report, because if there was a lot there and Mr. Barr is credibly accused of trying to hide that, that uncorks a whole lot of new questions.
All right, Ari, thank you. We know you'll be watching and reading along with us. Pete, thank you as well. And we will have live coverage this morning of the Attorney General's news conference. Lester Holt will join for that. And NBC News will post a copy of the Mueller report on NBCnews.com as soon as it becomes available.
Let's get to that severe weather now that is impacting millions as we head into this holiday weekend. Our workers standing by with what we can all expect and the damage that's apparently already been done by those storms, huh?
That's right. We're talking about 400 flights canceled to Dallas already, more on the way. We've got severe thunderstorm watches up. We've got severe thunderstorm warnings. We've got flood warnings as well. Rainfall rates at 3 inches per hour. This system stretches right now about 1,400 miles. And in fact, we have a severe thunderstorm warnings watches. We've got 19 million people at risk for severe weather from Houston all the way to Tallahassee today. Tomorrow, it's 43 million people from Orlando all the way up to Washington, D.C. Tornadoes possible, damaging winds at 60 miles per hour, causing some big problems. Here are the storm impacts. Heavy rain and flooding, very likely. Nashville, Memphis, down into Jackson. Most likely stretching from Albany all the way down to Montgomery. This is through tomorrow. Saturated soil increases the flood risk. And then we've got these impacts. Look at the rainfall rates. Anywhere from 1 to 3 inches of rain accumulations. Could be more than that. Numerous rounds of heavy rain. Intense bursts of heavy rain. Here's what we look for the airports. For today, New Orleans, Memphis, St. Louis, Detroit looking at delays. Cincinnati and Nashville, possible delays. Big travel day tomorrow. The I-95 corridor is going to be a mess, as will I-75, I-90. Airports for New York, Washington, Charlotte, Atlanta, and Orlando all expect delays. Possible delays for Pittsburgh. This is going to be a big impact storm, guys, and it's going to last right into the weekend. And not a lot of great news for Easter. We'll look at that a little bit later. Back to you, Savannah.
Al, thank you very much. And now to that troubling incident overnight at St. Patrick's Cathedral, just a block from where we're sitting right here in our studio. A man taken into custody. And police said he was carrying lighters, gas cans, and lighter fluid into the church. And needless to say, this is just days after that fire at Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. NBC's Kristen Dahlgren now with the details on this. Kristen, good morning.
Good morning to you, Savannah. Yeah, take a look and you can see the stepped up police presence here this morning. The FBI also getting involved in this investigation into a man that police say walked into this cathedral overnight with all of the ingredients for a fire. This morning, a New Jersey man is in police custody after he tried entering New York City's famous St. Patrick's Cathedral with 2 gasoline cans, 2 bottles of lighter fluid, and 2 lighters. Just days after a devastating fire erupted in the iconic Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. Around 8 p.m. Wednesday, law enforcement sources telling NBC News a man they have identified as Mark Lamparello of Hasbrook Heights, New Jersey, parked his minivan on 5th Avenue in front of the church and began walking around the area. Returning to his vehicle, Lamparello pulled out the flammable items and tried to enter the cathedral, but was quickly stopped by a security guard who directed Lamparello out of the church. The guard notifying 2 counterterrorism officers posted outside the cathedral about the incident. Police calling Lamparello's answers inconsistent and evasive.
His basic story was that he was cutting through the cathedral to get to Madison Avenue, that his car had run out of gas. We took a look at the vehicle. It was not out of gas, and at that point he was taken into custody.
Authorities here in New York say they do not have a motive and cannot say if Lamparello was inspired by the incident in Paris.
It's hard to say exactly what his intentions were, but I think the totality of circumstances is something that we would have great concern over.
Now, this morning, the suspect hasn't been formally charged. Police say it's too early to call this attempted terrorism, but they do say, guys, that his actions were very suspicious.
Kristen Dahlgren at St. Patrick's, thank you very much.
From that scary situation just a few blocks away to Denver, where area schools will reopen today following the end of a massive manhunt for a young woman accused of making credible threats just days before the 20th anniversary of the Columbine shooting. The 18-year-old was found dead on Wednesday. NBC's Joe Fryer has the very latest on this. Joe, good morning.
Craig, good morning. Students at hundreds of Denver area schools will return to class today. They stayed home yesterday while authorities search for a young woman accused of making threats that had this region on edge.
The manhunt is over with a grim discovery in the snowy remote mountains of Colorado. On Wednesday, authorities found the body of 18-year-old Sol Pais dead from an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound.
At this point, it looks as if she was alone, that she took her own life with the weapon that she procured.
The FBI says Pais legally purchased that weapon, a pump-action shotgun, on Monday. She got it at this gun shop outside Denver. The owner says she seemed normal and passed a background check, and the entire transaction took just 20 minutes.
She said she was out here visiting friends and wanted to go shooting and possibly hunting.
But authorities say Pais, who flew to Colorado from Florida on Monday, made credible threats against Denver area schools, prompting hundreds to close Wednesday. More than 500,000 students forced to stay home, including those at Columbine High.
I think it was the right thing to do, given the circumstances and all the unknowns, and certainly since we live near Columbine.
The FBI says Pais was obsessed with Columbine. NBC News uncovered what appears to be her online journals. For months, she wrote disturbing entries about Columbine, drawing pictures of guns and knives. And on this gun forum website, it appears she even inquired about buying a shotgun in Colorado. Authorities have not confirmed if the posts are hers. At Miami Beach High School, where Pais was a student, stunned reactions.
She has such a pretty smile, and she's just, I don't know, it's shocking to hear what she wanted to do.
Valentino Gomez has known Pais since elementary school.
I never saw it coming. It was very surprising at first. I didn't believe it. I didn't think she was going to do anything.
Investigators are gathering more evidence at Pais's Florida home. Police say her family has been cooperative.
They are actually grateful that no one else is hurt.
Well, schools are set to reopen today. Officials say they're taking no chances and increasing security.
We're very concerned that we may get a copycat threat of the same kind that tries to bring about this level of disruption.
Columbine is still moving forward with 20th anniversary events, including a vigil tomorrow and remembrance ceremony on Saturday. This community wants to focus on honoring the 13 victims, the 12 students and 1 teacher who lost their lives. Savannah and Craig.
Joe Fryer there for us in Colorado. Joe, thank you. And we will have more on the Columbine anniversary coming up in our next half hour, including Hoda's powerful conversations with survivors and family members 20 years later, how they've moved forward and how they've tried to rebuild their lives.
Look forward to that. Lots to get to this morning, including Ivanka Trump, the first daughter and White House senior advisor, has wrapped up her first official visit to Africa, and she's making headlines for what she's saying about turning down a very high-profile position she says her father offered her. NBC White House correspondent Peter Alexander's got that story. Peter, good morning.
Hey, Savannah, good morning to you. First, from Ivanka Trump on the Mueller report. She says that she has never expressed concern about the findings, and she says that that hasn't changed. But her focus this week has been on the other end of the planet, promoting a global women's initiative in Africa, a region that her father has privately disparaged. This morning, Ivanka Trump making her way back to the U.S. after finding her groove in Africa. Crossing the continent to tout economic empowerment for women, touring a textile business run by women, trying her hand at the loom, and sampling traditional Ethiopian coffee. Earlier this week, Ms. Trump paying respects to the 157 lives lost in last month's deadly plane crash. The president's daughter saying America's commitment to Africa is clear.
So our actions are speaking for themselves in terms of our dedication to seeing Africa prosper.
Still, the trip is renewing scrutiny of the Trump administration's stance on Africa, criticized for not expanding aid and other resources to the region, and for the president's derogatory comments last year, calling Haiti and African nations S-hole countries during an immigration meeting. On this trip, the first daughter and senior White House advisor also weighed in on issues at home, including the flood of migrants across the southern border.
There's no other way to feel than extremely empathetic for these families. But we also have to protect the people within this country as well.
President Trump has lavished praise on his daughter, even suggesting she lead the World Bank.
Ask you if you'd be interested in taking on that role yourself.
He did.
And what was his pitch to you?
It was a question.
Yeah. And you said no.
I'm very happy doing the work that I'm doing.
Are there any other positions he's asked you about? He's sort of floated you as for UN ambassador as well?
I'll keep that between us.
Her father going even further in a recent interview with The Atlantic, saying, if she ever wanted to run for president, I think she'd be very, very hard to beat. A suggestion Ivanka Trump brushed away.
There will be
in your future?
No.
And as for the 2020 presidential campaign, Ivanka Trump says that she's much more focused on policy than she is on politics. She says, in her words, that she's not really a political animal. Craig and Savannah, back to you.
All right. Peter Alexander outside the West Wing. Thank you.
And now back to Al for the rest of the forecast.
That's right. Well, our friends out west are experiencing a great day today. Lots of sunshine, temperatures nice and mild. It'll be mild in the mid-Atlantic, but we are watching those severe storms getting themselves together right now throughout Texas and on toward the Midwest.